read the passage of the Bibles, like John 1 and then Genesis 1, 3, they might explain, just an example, there's some interrelationship. Well, it depends on the contents and so on and so forth. But the Quran says, well, the Quran has to say, but the Quran also need to be translated and understood in relation to the other parts of the Quran. So the Quran expresses itself. And then the Hadith, we talk about the Hadith, yeah? The sayings of the Prophet, the narrations attributed to the Prophet, considered the word of Muhammad. The Quran is considered the word of God. And then Sirah, the biography of the Prophet. So Sirah is the biography of the Prophet, also his companions, so on. So basically the history. So you have a history or a historical biography of the Prophet, the companions, the early companions, the followers of companions. So basically this is like a historical sources also, used for interpreting some of the passages of the Quran. And then tafsir itself, that's another, you use other tafsir in order to explain the Quran. You use other interpretations in order to interpret the passage of the Quran. So that's why you have the tradition, the change on transmission, from time to time. So Muslim scholar would use the previous translations and interpretation to produce other interpretations all the way until today. So for example, the part of the Quran today, you will find references to the previous tafsir, to previous commentaries. Yep, maybe from the 19th century, maybe from the 17th century, yeah? Okay, maybe from 10th century, classical tafsir, classical commentaries. So you still produce your tafsir, your commentary today on the basis of the previous commentaries before. So you have an accumulation of commentaries of the Quran. Yeah? So that's why we use also tafsir as one of the sources of tafsir or commentary. When I say tafsir, it's commentary. In the biblical tradition, we call exegesis.
Exegesis.
Yeah? Biblical exegesis. Okay? And sometimes Muslims also use the term Quranic exegesis or Quranic commentaries or Quranic interpretation. And, different terms for basically the same thing. Okay? Fiqh is Islamic jurisprudence, legal discussion, legal commentaries of the Quran. Some of the sources that are also used for and interpreting the Quran. Okay. I don't want to overwhelm you with terms, tafsir and ta'wil, but tafsir, generally speaking, the commentary is outer meaning of the Quran. Outer meaning, like the literal meaning. And then ta'wil, in many cases, not always, is inner meanings. Inner meaning. So more like a spiritual, mystical meanings of certain passages of the Quran. Okay? Outer meanings are more like external, outer meanings. We'll come into this later on when we talk about spirituality and Sufism and Sufi tafsir, Sufi commentaries of the Quran. Yeah, we'll come into this more. I just want to introduce you a little bit about it for now. So I want to wait until later to talk about that. But that's the general thing. This is the one I mentioned. Yeah, I don't talk about this. Now the types of interpretation. Different types of interpretation. One is by transmission, two by sound opinion, three by indication. Okay, I'll try to explain just briefly now. By transmission, if you interpret the passage of the Quran using hadith, using the sayings of the Prophet, okay, Prophet Muhammad would explain the meaning of this chapter or this passage. Okay, so by transmission means by the transmission of knowledge. In this case, is hadith. You also can use again before I talk about sirah, yeah, biography. That's also by transmission. Riwayah. Don't worry about the Arabic terms, okay, for many of you. Sound opinion is by your own reasoning. The first one is using hadith, using the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, using the sayings of the companions of Muhammad, Remember, Muhammad had companions, Sahaba in Arabic, companions. Companions, those people who accepted Muhammad as a prophet, and they lived with him, yeah, they saw his life, okay? And basically they would also report it, some of the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, and then you would also use the companions' sayings to explain what the Quran means. You see, now you have God. Okay, now imagine yourself. Imagine yourself, you have the Word of God. Okay, means imagine yourself, you have the Word of God. Convey by Muhammad to the people. At that time, you have the families, the relatives, the companions of the Prophet. Yeah, and then you have, how would you understand this Word of God? First, Muhammad would also explain what it means. Yeah, okay, Muhammad would explain what it means. But then you have the companions who were around Muhammad would listen to what he said, and then also reported what he said. Okay? And these reports would be used for some of the sources that later commentators would use. So in other words, one passage would include, Muhammad saying, the Word of God, right? And then the companion sayings, and then the commentators after the companions all the way. So you have an accumulation of knowledge and literature as a result of these interactions. It's a very sophisticated tradition of knowledge in this tradition of Islam. So that's why sound opinion sometimes is used, because you are human beings. You have to use your reasons. Even though there's something said by the previous people, the previous authorities, you still need to use your own reasoning. Yeah, so in other words, the second one, by sound opinion, be right, that you use your own reasoning, your own thinking, what this particular passage mean to you as a human being, as a father, as a political leader, as a merchant, as a mother, as a woman, as a whatever. Your own reasoning would also be used when you are interacting with the Quran. And that's why you have the second one. So either by transmission, by the sources that you already had as a text, or you use your own reason. That's number 2. Number 3, by indication. It's mostly among the Sufi mystics. Did I mention about mysticism before?
Mysticism.
All right. Did anybody knows about mysticism? Go ahead. Go ahead. Anything that you want to say? I thought you raised your hand.
Yeah, it's a little different. It's not like the traditional other schools.
Mhm.
They worship differently. Like some of them sing or dance to worship.
Yes.
And
Mhm.
they do, I forgot what it's called, but like
Sufism.
Yeah.
You know, ruling the emphasis?
Another practice is like when they repeat
Mhm. Is
like
zikr?
yeah.
Yeah. It's a remembrance of God repeatedly? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. That's good. Well, so mysticism is quite universal across religious traditions. Okay, but then there's a Muslim mysticism. We call mysticism again. It's in Islamic tradition of knowledge called Sufism or Tasawwuf. There's different meaning for it, but I just want to explain about indication. So basically, a Sufi is a human being who already mastered the Quran, who knows the Quran, Arabic and everything, but then they feel like the outer meaning of the Quran, the traditional interpretation of the Quran, not sufficient enough for them. It's not really helping them to reach God. That they feel like they are still feel a distance between themselves and God. So the idea of mysticism is that there is a union with God. Be in union with God. The main objective of Sufism is to be in union with God as a beloved. So it's a relationship of love. Beloved, lover, and beloved.
How do you spell that?
Sufism?
Yeah.
S-U, that's the... Alright, so... You want to write that. Don't worry about it. Okay, again, this is a transliteration of the word of Sufism. So by indication is that you use your own word to express the meaning of the Quran. And more personal, more private, more spiritual, more mystical. Rather than simply using the transmission or using your own rationality. So it's more by your own heart and intuition. Okay, so different ways Muslims engage the Quran, using the transmitted knowledges from the previous generations. Yeah, using your own judgment, using your own heart. Yeah. All right. 3 types of interpretations to the Quran. Sounds good? Now the question is, are they necessarily in conflict, or they are necessarily very distinct, or you can have both, or mixture of all this? Yeah? What do you think? It could be also a mix, right? Doesn't have to be like in contradiction, bless you. So in other words, they can use still the transmissions, yeah, from the previous generation, how they commented the Quran, and they can also use their own judgment, and then they can also use their own heart and their own feeling and intuitions that they feel like I need to be more in relation, closer relation to God. Okay, so far so good, yeah. About 3 types of interpretations. They are not necessarily in contradiction. They might complement, they might support, and it really depends. So I will mention about the Quran explained, by the Quran. Just an example, we send it down during blessed night, and we have indeed revealed this in the night of Qadr. So when the Quran says blessed night, what is the blessed night? Any night or something, and then you have in the night of Qadr. So just an example, the one verse of the Quran explained the other verse of the Quran. But again, you would need either the transmission, the people before you who said that this particular verse explained this particular verse, or you use your own judgment, right? When you see the part of the Quran, like how many verses again? There are 6,000 something, right? 6,256 something, right? So you have from the chapter this, the chapter 3, and then you use your own judgment. While these passages, should also be explained by reading the other passages in other, and so on. So you have this, the Quran explaining the other parts of the Quran. This is another one. This is about the Quran explained by Muhammad through the hadith. Yeah, I know it's a lot of word, okay? But the point about this is the notion of thread. Yeah, white thread of down and black thread. What is white thread and black thread? What is thread here, right? And then what is it? And then there's a hadith explaining what the thread means, black thread and white thread, which is basically night, darkness, and the day of the white. So the darkness of the darkness of the day, the darkness of the night, and the whiteness of the day. So when it comes to explaining the Quran using Muhammad saying. Then Muhammad said this, explaining what this particular meaning of this passage. Just an example, right? And then use reason. I already talked about this. And now, because of you use human reasons, there's so many interpretations. Yeah, the Quran is one, but many